The bank sat on a busy street, where people rushed in and out all day. Most came for simple things, withdrawals, deposits, short questions they wanted answered fast. That morning looked no different from any other. The air inside smelled like paper, coffee, and quiet impatience. Tellers worked behind the counters with practiced smiles. A few customers tapped their feet, checking their phones, waiting their turn. Near the glass doors, a man stepped inside slowly. He paused for a moment, as if making sure he was in the right place. His jacket was clean but old, the kind worn for years without complaint. His shoes showed signs of long use, though they were neatly tied. Nothing about him stood out. He was the kind of person people often look past without noticing. He adjusted the strap of a worn backpack on his shoulder and glanced toward the waiting area. His eyes were tired but calm. The tiredness did not come from a late night or lack of sleep. It came from years of responsibility carried quietly. He had learned how to hold things in, how to keep going even when life felt heavy. At home, a young child waited for him. Every decision he made started and ended with that fact. Mornings were about packed lunches, clean clothes, and quick hugs before school. Nights were about homework at the kitchen table and stories read before bed. There was no one else to share the load. He had been doing it alone for a long time, and it had shaped him into someone patient, careful, and steady. The line moved forward slowly. He stepped up when his turn came, standing straight in front of the counter. The teller smiled politely and asked how she could help. He returned the smile, small and respectful. "I need a deposit check," he said. His voice was soft but clear. He reached into his backpack and pulled out an envelope, wore at the edges from being handled more than once. Inside was a check that had taken him months to accept as real. Even now, holding it still felt unreal. The teller took the check and glanced down. Her expression changed almost at once. Her eyes widened, then narrowed slightly. She looked up at him, then back at the check, then up at him again. Her smile faded into something cautious. "I'll need my manager to look at this," she said, standing up from her chair. He nodded. He had expected that. The number printed on the check was not small. It was large enough to stop a room. Across the floor, the bank manager stood near her office, speaking with another employee. She was dressed sharply, hair pulled back neatly, her posture firm and confident. She took the check from the teller and glanced at it for less than a second before looking at the man. Her eyes moved over him quickly. The jacket, the shoes, the backpack. Her expression hardened, not with anger, but with doubt. The kind of doubt that forms instantly and feels justified without question. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Her tone was not friendly, nor openly rude. It carried authority, sharp and final. "It's payment," he said simply. "From a business deal." She raised an eyebrow. "A business deal?" she repeated. People nearby began to listen without meaning to. A man sitting in the waiting area lowered his newspaper. A woman waiting behind him shifted closer. "Curious." "Yes," he said. "Everything is legal. The contact information is on the check." The manager glanced down again, this time longer. Her lips pressed together. The number written across the line seemed to offend her. It did not match the man standing in front of her. "We don't usually see amounts like this from individuals," she said, placing light pressure on the word. He understood what she meant. Even if she didn't say it directly, he had learned to recognize that tone over the years. It was the same tone used by people who believed struggle had a certain look, and success another. "I understand," he replied calmly. "That's why I came here instead of using an ATM." She let out a short breath, almost a laugh, though no humor reached her eyes. "This check needs verification," she said. "And until then, it's not valid." "I'm fine with verification," he said. "That's expected." She turned slightly toward the teller. "Did you run it through the system?" "Not yet," the teller answered. The manager shook her head and held up the check between her fingers, as if it might stain her hands. "There's no point," she said. "We see fake checks like this more often than you'd think." The words landed harder than she intended, or perhaps exactly as she intended. A few people nearby shifted uncomfortably. The man felt a familiar tightness in his chest, but he did not show it. "This isn't fake," he said evenly. She looked at him again, longer this time, her gaze cold and measuring. "Sir," she said, stressing the word, "do you have any idea how many people walk in here every year trying something like this?" He nodded once. "I'm sure you see many," he said. "I'm not one of them." The manager's patience thinned. Her voice grew louder, just enough for others to hear clearly. "You expect me to believe that someone like you suddenly has a $10 million check?" The room went quiet. All eyes were now on him. He felt heat rise in his face, but he kept his hands steady on the counter. Years of being underestimated had taught him control. Losing his temper would only confirm what people already believed. "Yes," he said, "because it's the truth." The manager straightened, as if making a decision. "This bank has rules," she said, "and one of them is protecting our customers from fraud." She tore the check in half. The sound was sharp, paper ripping in a room that had gone completely silent. For a moment, no one moved. The teller froze. The customers stared. The torn pieces rested in the manager's hand, like proof of power. The man did not speak right away. He looked at the pieces, then back at her face. His expression did not change, but something deep in his eyes shifted. "That check was real," he said quietly. She shrugged. "If it was, you can request another one," she replied. "Now I need you to leave." The words hit harder than the action, not because of the money, but because of the judgment behind them. He took a slow breath. His mind flashed briefly to his child, to the promise he had made. Always act with dignity, no matter how others treated him. "I'd like to speak with someone else," he said. "Someone above you." The manager looked surprised, then annoyed. "There's no need," she said. "I'm the one in charge here." "I still want to speak with your supervisor," he said. His calm unsettled her more than anger would have. She studied him again, as if searching for something she had missed. But pride kept her from reconsidering. "Wait here," she said sharply. She turned and walked toward her office, the torn pieces of the check still in her hand. The man stood quietly at the counter. People around him whispered. Some shook their heads. Others looked away, uncomfortable. He felt the weight of their eyes, but did not let it bend him. He had carried heavier things than judgment. He had carried responsibility, loss, and hope all at once. And he knew, deep down, that this moment was not over yet. The minutes that followed felt longer than they really were. The man stood at the counter while the low noise of the bank slowly returned. Someone cleared their throat. A phone buzzed. A teller tapped at a keyboard, pretending nothing unusual had happened. But everyone felt it. Something heavy now sat in the room. He rested his hands on the smooth counter surface and waited. He had learned long ago that rushing never helped. When his life changed years back, when he suddenly became both parent and provider, patience became a skill he had to practice every day. You learn it when there is no one else to step in. Behind him, a woman whispered to the man beside her. He didn't turn around, but he could feel the weight of their curiosity. Some faces carried pity. Others carried judgment. A few showed quiet support. He did not look for any of it. He focused on his breathing, slow and steady. The bank manager disappeared into her office and shut the door harder than needed. Inside, she paced back and forth, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She told herself she had done the right thing. She told herself rules were rules. Still, something about the man's calm stayed with her. Most people in his position would have raised their voice. He hadn't. She picked up the phone on her desk and dialed an internal number. Her voice was firm as she spoke, explaining that a customer had attempted to deposit what she believed was a fake check. She made sure to mention the amount, letting the number speak for itself. Out front, the teller glanced at the man with uncertainty. She wanted to say something kind, but fear of her manager kept her quiet. Instead, she offered a small, apologetic smile. He returned it, letting her know he understood. He shifted his weight slightly and looked around the bank. The walls were lined with posters about trust, security, and respect. He almost smiled at the irony. Trust was easy to advertise, harder to practice. His thoughts drifted back to the past, to the long road that had led him here. There were years when he barely had enough to cover rent and groceries. Years when his child's needs came before his own every single time. He had learned to stretch a dollar, to fix things instead of replacing them, to say no to himself without resentment. Success did not arrive suddenly for him. It came slowly, built piece by piece, often in silence. Late nights, early mornings, risks taken when failure would have hurt more than pride. He never talked about it. He never felt the need to explain himself to strangers. The bank manager's door finally opened. She stepped out, her expression controlled but tight. Behind her walked another employee who looked uneasy, eyes darting between the manager and the man at the counter. "Sir," the manager said loudly, "we reviewed the situation." She stopped a few feet away, arms crossed. "At this time, we're not moving forward with your request," she continued. "You'll need to leave the premises." The words echoed across the room. A few customers exchanged glances. The man looked at her calmly. "I asked to speak with your supervisor," he said. "I am authorized to handle this," she replied quickly. "There's nothing more to discuss." He nodded slowly, then spoke again. "Then please document that you destroyed a customer's property without verification," he said. "And note that I requested higher review." Her eyes widened slightly. She did not expect that response. Most people didn't know how to speak that way. The confidence behind his words did not match the image she had created of him. "That won't be necessary," she said sharply. "It will," he replied, still calm. "For your records." The room felt tight again. The teller swallowed hard. Someone near the entrance quietly took out their phone, pretending to text. The manager hesitated. Just for a moment, pride pushed her forward, but uncertainty pulled back. "I'll make a call," she said finally. "Wait here." She turned and walked toward a different office, one farther down the hall. This time, she closed the door more carefully. The man exhaled slowly. He rolled his shoulders once, releasing tension. Waiting had never bothered him. He had waited through worse things than this. Courtrooms, hospital rooms, long nights wondering how he would make it all work. As he stood there, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked the screen and saw a message from his child's school about an upcoming event. He smiled faintly and typed a quick reply, promising he would be there. That promise mattered more to him than any check. Across the room, an older man caught his eye and gave a small nod. It wasn't much, but it was something, a quiet sign of respect. Inside the office, the manager spoke more carefully now. She explained the situation again, this time leaving out certain details. She did not mention tearing the check right away. She focused on her suspicion, on procedure, on protection. On the other end of the line, there was a pause. "Did you verify it?" a voice asked. "No," she said. "I didn't see the need." Another pause, longer this time. "You tore it up?" the voice asked. Her jaw tightened. "Yes," she said. It appeared fraudulent. Silence filled the space between words. The manager shifted in her chair. Back in the lobby, the man watched the second hand on the wall clock move slowly. He was not angry. He was disappointed, not for himself, but for how easily people mistook calm for weakness. He remembered teaching his child that respect should be given before it is earned back. That lesson felt important now. The office door opened again. The manager stepped out, her face pale in a way it hadn't been before. She cleared her throat and looked directly at him. "Please wait," she said, her tone different now. Less sharp, more careful. "I am waiting," he replied. She nodded and gestured for another employee to stay nearby. Then she walked quickly toward the main entrance, glancing at her watch. Whispers grew louder. Something had changed. Everyone could feel it. The man remained where he was. He straightened his jacket slightly and adjusted the strap of his backpack again. His posture stayed relaxed, but grounded. A few minutes later, the glass doors at the front of the bank opened. Someone important had arrived, and the balance of the room began to shift. The glass doors closed behind the person who had just entered, and the sound carried across the bank. Conversation stopped again, as if the room itself was holding its breath. The man at the counter did not turn right away. He waited, listening to the footsteps moving across the floor, slow, confident, unhurried. The bank manager straightened her back and walked forward, her earlier certainty now replaced with tight control. She offered a polite smile that did not quite reach her eyes. The person who had entered spoke quietly to her, and she nodded several times, glancing toward the counter after each sentence. The man finally turned. He took in the scene without surprise. He had seen moments like this before, though not often. Moments when the truth arrived quietly and changed the mood of an entire room. The visitor was dressed simply, but everything about him suggested authority. Not the loud kind, the calm kind. He carried himself as someone used to being listened to. "Good morning," the visitor said, his voice steady. The man nodded in return. "Good morning," he replied. The bank manager stepped in quickly. "There's been a misunderstanding," she said. "This customer attempted to deposit a check that appeared fraudulent. I acted according to procedure." The visitor did not respond right away. Instead, he looked at the man at the counter. "Is that correct?" he asked. "Not exactly," the man said. "I attempted to deposit a legitimate check. It was destroyed before verification." The word destroyed seemed to land heavily. The visitor's eyes flicked briefly to the manager. "Is that true?" he asked her. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," she said. "I made a judgment call." The visitor exhaled slowly, then turned back to the man. "May I ask where the check came from?" "From a company I helped build," the man answered. "The sale finalized last week." The visitor studied him closely now. Not his clothes, his face, his posture, the way he spoke. "I see," he said. The bank manager shifted her weight. Her confidence was slipping, though she tried to hide it. "Do you have any documentation?" the visitor asked. The man reached into his backpack again and removed a slim folder. Inside were copies, contracts, confirmations, contact details. He handed them over without ceremony. The visitor flipped through them carefully. With each page, his expression changed slightly. His brow furrowed, then relaxed. He paused at one document longer than the others. "This is all in order," he said quietly. The manager's face tightened. "It still could be," she began. "It isn't," the visitor said, cutting her off gently but firmly. The room felt smaller. The teller behind the counter stared at her screen, not daring to look up. The visitor closed the folder and handed it back to the man. "I apologize for what you've experienced here," he said. "This should have been handled differently." The man nodded once. "I understand mistakes happen," he said. "What matters is how they're handled." The visitor turned to the manager. "Do you realize the seriousness of destroying a valid financial instrument?" he asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her earlier certainty was gone now, replaced by something close to fear. "I was trying to protect the bank," she said quietly. "Protection requires verification," the visitor replied, "not assumptions." He looked around the lobby, noticing the watching customers, the stiff employees, the tension hanging in the air. "Let's step into my office," he said. He gestured for the man to follow. The manager hesitated, then followed behind them. Inside the office, the door closed softly. The noise of the lobby faded, replaced by quiet and the hum of the building. "Please sit," the visitor said. The man sat, resting his hands on his knees. He remained calm, though the weight of the morning pressed on him now. Not anger, just fatigue. "I won't take much of your time," the visitor said, "but I want to make this right." "I appreciate that," the man replied. The visitor turned to the manager. "Did you consider how this would affect him?" he asked. She looked down. "I thought it was a scam," she said. "Based on what?" She did not answer right away. "Based on his appearance?" the visitor asked gently. Her silence was answer enough. The man watched this exchange without satisfaction. He did not feel victorious. He felt tired. He had seen this pattern too many times in life. "I didn't come here for an apology," he said. "I came to do something simple." The visitor nodded. "And you should have been able to," he said, without humiliation. He turned his attention back to the manager. "I need you to step outside," he said. "We'll speak later." She nodded stiffly and left the room. The visitor waited until the door closed, then leaned forward slightly. "May I ask something personal?" he said. The man shrugged. "You can ask." "Why didn't you react?" the visitor asked. "Most people would have." The man thought for a moment. "Because I have a child watching how I behave," he said, "even when they're not in the room." The visitor smiled faintly. "That says a lot," he said. He stood, and extended his hand. "I assure you, this will be corrected immediately." The man shook his hand. "I trust that," he said. As they left the office together, the lobby fell silent again. The manager stood off to the side, her face pale, eyes fixed on the floor. The visitor addressed the staff. "We'll be reviewing procedures today," he said calmly, "and we'll be issuing a formal apology." The man gathered his things. As he walked toward the door, a few customers nodded at him. One even offered a quiet smile. He stepped outside into the sunlight, took a deep breath, and felt the tension ease slightly. This wasn't over yet, but the truth had finally been heard. The man did not leave the bank right away. After stepping outside for a moment, he was asked politely to come back in. The visitor had made a short call and wanted to finish things properly. The man agreed and followed without hesitation. When he re-entered, the mood inside had changed completely. The tension was still there, but it had shifted. It was no longer pressing down on him. Instead, it seemed to hang over the staff, quiet and uneasy. The visitor stood near the counter now, speaking in a calm but clear voice. Employees listened closely. No one interrupted. "We are going to correct what happened today," the visitor said, "and we're going to do it the right way." The man stood a few steps back, hands resting loosely at his sides. He did not seek attention, but attention found him anyway. The visitor turned toward him. "Sir," he said, the word carrying respect this time, "thank you for your patience." That single word echoed through the lobby. A few people glanced at the manager standing off to the side. Her shoulders stiffened. The visitor continued. "We have confirmed the transaction details," he said. "The check was valid. The error was ours." A soft murmur moved through the room. The teller at the counter looked up, eyes wide. The manager swallowed hard. The visitor did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "An official apology will be issued," he said, "and a replacement check will be requested immediately." The man nodded. "That's all I wanted," he said, "to be treated fairly." The visitor studied him for a moment. "You showed restraint when it would have been easier not to," he said. "That matters." The manager stepped forward slowly. "I'd like to apologize," she said, her voice tight, "for my behavior." The man looked at her. He did not rush his response. "I hope you learn from this," he said quietly, "because the next person might not be as patient." Her face flushed. She nodded once. The visitor turned to the staff. "We will also be reviewing internal conduct," he said. "Respect is not optional." The words landed heavily. A short while later, the paperwork was prepared. The man sat at a desk while an employee carefully explained each step. Everything was done slowly, correctly, and with care. A contrast to how the morning had begun. As he signed forms, his phone buzzed again. Another message from his child. He smiled and typed a quick reply, promising he would be home on time. That promise grounded him. Money changed many things, but not what mattered most. The manager was called away to a private office. She did not return to the lobby. The visitor walked the man to the entrance. "I hope this doesn't change how you see us," he said. "It reminds me to stay aware," the man replied. "That's all." They shook hands. Outside, the air felt lighter. The man stood for a moment on the sidewalk, letting the sunlight hit his face. People passed by, unaware of what had just happened inside. He thought about the years he spent being invisible, about how often he had been underestimated. Today was different, not because of the money, but because he had stayed true to himself. Inside the bank, the staff worked quietly. No one joked. No one rushed. The lesson had settled in. The visitor returned to his office and made a few calls. Policies would change. Training would follow. Consequences would be handled privately. And the man walked away, knowing the hardest part of his life had already been behind him. The rest was just details. One chapter was closing. Another was about to begin. The days that followed moved quietly, but they carried weight. The man returned to his normal routine. Morning alarms, breakfast plates, a small hand holding his as they walked part of the way to school. From the outside, nothing had changed. He still dressed the same. He still drove the same car. He still lived in the same modest home. But inside, Something had settled. Not pride, not anger, just a calm sense of closure. A courier arrived midweek with a sealed envelope. Inside was a formal letter from the bank. The language was careful and respectful. It confirmed the error, the replacement of the destroyed check, and a personal apology from senior leadership. The replacement check was enclosed, untouched, crisp, and very real. He placed it back into the envelope and set it aside. He did not rush. He had learned that urgency was rarely helpful. Later that afternoon, he returned to the bank. This time, the doors opened differently. Not louder, not grander, just different. The teller recognized him immediately and greeted him with genuine warmth. No forced smile, no hesitation. "Welcome back," she said. He nodded and handed over the envelope. The process was careful and respectful. Verification happened quietly. No stares, no whispers, just professionalism. While waiting, he sat in a chair near the window. Sunlight spilled across the floor. He watched people outside hurry past, each carrying their own story. He wondered how many of them had been judged unfairly at some point. Probably more than anyone realized. The deposit was completed without issue. "Everything is set," the teller said. "If you need anything at all, please let us know." "Thank you," he replied. As he stood to leave, he noticed the bank manager was not there. Her office door was closed. Later, he would learn that changes had been made. Training required. Responsibilities adjusted. Consequences handled quietly, without spectacle. That felt right to him. Justice did not need an audience. At home that evening, he cooked dinner while his child talked about school, about a project, about a small victory on the playground. He listened closely, just as he always had. "Did you have a good day?" the child asked. "Yes," he said. "I did." "Why?" "Because I remembered what matters." The child nodded, satisfied, and returned to their meal. Over the next few weeks, life began to change in practical ways. Bills became easier. Worries grew quieter. He set up accounts meant for the future. Education, security, time. But the biggest changes were invisible. He continued to live simply. He did not chase attention. He did not announce his success. When people asked what he did, he answered plainly. When they assumed otherwise, he did not correct them. He taught his child the same values that had carried him through hard years. Be kind. Be steady. Don't measure people by what you see. One afternoon, he received a call from the visitor who had stepped in that day at the bank. The voice on the line was respectful. "I wanted to follow up," the visitor said. "What happened revealed gaps we needed to see." "I hope it helps," the man replied. "It already has," the visitor said. "Thank you for how you handled it." After the call ended, the man sat quietly for a moment. He thought back to the sound of the check tearing, the looks, the silence, the choice he had made not to react. He understood something now that he hadn't fully before. Dignity was not something others gave you. It was something you carried. Months later, he walked past the same bank on his way to an appointment. Through the glass, he saw new posters, new messages, words about respect, fairness, and listening. They meant more now. He did not go inside. At home that night, his child asked a question that surprised him. "Why don't you get mad when people are unfair?" He thought carefully before answering. "Because anger gives other people control," he said. "Calm keeps it with you." The child considered this, then smiled. "I want to be like that," they said. He smiled back. In the end, the story was never really about the money. The check was only paper. The number was only a number. The real moment happened when someone was judged by how they looked instead of who they were, and chose dignity anyway. The bank returned to its routine. Customers came and went. The world kept moving. But one quiet lesson remained. Respect costs nothing. And arrogance costs more than anyone realizes.